Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as Fuck,
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Dianne, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. So today we have this incredible opportunity where I am getting the chance to interview Liz Volpe. So Liz being my co-host and the actual reason that I'm here doing this podcast in the first place, I have been dying to do an interview on Liz. And in last session that we had, the last episode, we interviewed David the medium. And for me, so many questions came up after that we just thought, we need to jump in with the next episode, going into the life of a medium, the experience of a medium, and unpacking some of Liz's personal experience, because we've only touched on this in the first and second episodes here. So Liz, this is truly bizarre for both of us. I don't know whether you're feeling it, but for me to interview you just seems absolutely crazy that we're doing this. But I feel like it's absolutely necessary at the moment just to start digging that little bit deeper into you, into your gifts, and into your experience in the world.
Yeah, why not? I actually feel a bit nervous here. The pressure is on.
The pressure is on, but this is what we agreed when we started doing Spiritual as Fuck, that was it. It was like, we're not holding anything back. We are going to absolutely be real and raw.
Okay, so, I promise I will be as honest as possible. I won't hold anything back. And there is a lot I'd probably like to hold back here, but why not? Let's go all in.
Yeah, and that's true. But well, let's just go where it needs to go. So none of this is particularly scripted. We've got a general idea. So I just want to bring you back very first to your first kind of memorable experience where you were like, so either the first connection with spirit or the first thing that made you realize, okay, this is something big. My life is changing and I am developing or I'm uncovering a major gift.
This is an interesting one, because when I look at my life as who I've now realized I am, it's almost like the life is split up to different sections. And there's kind of like this section, which is the actual naming of becoming a medium. But interestingly enough, the first memory was in my early 20s. And this is something that has only just come back to me. You know, I'm suddenly remembering these experiences. And actually, I was living in Brisbane. I was in my first taste of just being really hungry to learn about everything spiritual. You know, I'd got my first deck of angel cards. I was reading books, and meditation was, I guess, the thing that I started to practice. And I found, again, synchronicity, signs. I was led to a meditation class, which I didn't realize. But when I turned up there, it turned out it was actually a psychic development class.
Oh, okay. So that's a bit of a difference.
I know. I mean, I was already a little bit uncomfortable or out of my comfort zone going into, you know, practice meditation. But I walked into this old hall in Brisbane, and there was a lot of people there. I would say maybe 30 to 50 people that were already sat in this huge circle in the middle of a hall. And as I walked in, there was a big tray at the front of the room, and everyone was taking an item off a tray. And I remember walking in and the lady saying, "Do you have something that you can put in the tray?" And I was thinking, well, this is weird for meditation. And I remember just looking down and thinking, well, I've got a ring on. All right. So I put the ring in the tray, and I had to pick something of somebody else's, and I picked up a watch, and I went and sat down. And the whole thing started as a meditation. I was sat next to, you know, all these people, and I closed my eyes and started to go deep into this meditation. And something really interesting happened to me. I was holding the watch. And the first thing that happened as we're going through probably a 20-minute to 30-minute meditation was I could not stop coughing. Oh. And I had this itchy throat that came from nowhere. You know, I walked in with no cough whatsoever, and I could not stop coughing. And I was so paranoid because I knew everyone was trying to meditate. You know, that the room was silent, and there's me like coughing. And I think we had to do something crazy like hold hands. And I just remember thinking, the lady said, "Don't break the circle." So I was like, shit, coughing. I really needed to, like, have a drink of water, and I could feel the tension of the people just being really angry around me. They couldn't get into
Oh
the swing of the
gosh.
meditation. Anyway, eventually we ended, thank God. And it was, someone mentioned, well, I couldn't really concentrate because someone was coughing in the room. Oh no, I just wanted to die of embarrassment. But a lady brought up to me that can sometimes happen when someone's trying to communicate with you. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But what happened next was we all had to go around the room, and we had to talk about the item that we were holding in our hands.
Oh my God. I've got goosebumps. You're just even starting to
God.
tell this. Yeah, go, go.
I held this watch, and as it's coming to my time, I could clearly feel something happening for me. And this was brand new. This had never happened. And the only way I can describe this was my whole energy was being like pulled, kind of like something you see on Star Wars, like when you see like an energetic field going from your body straight to a young guy across the room. And I was feeling my almost like my body being pulled forward with the strength of me being pulled towards this person. And very quickly, I was starting to receive what I can just only say, or I describe as like very quick flashes of light and feelings, and kind of all sorts of things drop into me really quickly. And it came to my time, and the fear came in, but I just found myself suddenly saying things about this watch, and I was like, this watch is owned by a man that's passed away. It belongs to the guy, and I pointed to the guy at the other
Oh
side of the room, and
gosh.
your dad's actually here. It's your dad's watch, is that correct? And the guy nodded back. And at that point, it was like I jumped in front of myself then, and I was kind of like, what did I just say? What, he nodded? This is his dad's? Where did that information come from? And I walked out that day, honestly being really scared. I was really freaked out by that. I mean, I was curious and interested in, like, did that happen? Did I just
Yeah.
make that up? How did I know that information? And I actually went to speak to the guy after the session, and I shared more of what had come through, which I didn't dare to say out
Yeah.
loud, and he validated it. And that piece of information honestly has been buried till very recently.
I find that fascinating. Like, as you were telling that, number one, my jaw was on the floor. So anybody who looks at this on YouTube will be seeing me with my mouth open. But the fact that it only came back to you recently,
Mm.
that, like, why do you think that is? What do you think you buried it? Was there a fear
Mm.
factor that if I open the floodgates here, or if I accept this, then, what am I opening myself up to? What do you think made you forget about it until recently?
It's funny because this has happened a lot, yeah, recently, being in this
Yeah.
spiritual awakening, lots of information coming back to me. I was really into everything spiritual in my 20s. All right.
Yeah.
So really into it. Um, at some point it all got a bit too much for me. And being younger, not having support around me, not feeling, like I even knew who I was at that point, that I went through these experiences for a number of years, and then very quickly completely pushed it to the back of my mind. It was too scary for me. I was
Okay.
not
Yeah.
ready at that particular point. At that particular point, I was really building relationships with angels. Actually,
Yeah.
angels was my thing then, looking back. And I think angels was my thing because angels are non-threatening, they're non-scary. You imagine angel with this beautiful vibration and light, and doing angel cards was a lot softer and a
Yeah.
gentler step into spirituality. But then suddenly being able to connect with the spirit, that was just not ready for that.
Yeah. And to have it validated then. So it's one thing that, okay, even if you believe it, but to have someone validate it back to you, it's like, this shit's really real. It's,
It really is. Can you imagine? My God. I mean, I
yeah.
don't think I would have even shared that with too many people at that point, to be honest. It got probably wrote down in a diary or a journal somewhere, and yeah, closed
Yeah.
and put in a box.
Yeah. Yeah. So what really interests me, and I know that, anytime that I have gone for a reading myself, and just anyone with spiritual gifts at all. It's like, what goes on internally? How do you process this information? How does it come to you? So, I really want to dig into and even going back to your early days as opposed to right now, but how was the information being received? You mentioned you were getting some flashes of light, and there were things, but I want to understand, was it a vision that was coming in front of you? Was it a
Mm.
thought, a feeling? What was it like? Because I know for different mediums, it's a different experience. So if you can share that with us, I think it'd be a bit mind blowing for listeners.
I mean, this is something that I find very hard to articulate. I'm not good
Mm.
at articulating anyway, but yet alone actually trying to explain this one. So early days, the information would come from this very clear, deep sense of knowing. So
Yeah.
just knowing things, but having no idea where that information may have come from. So those deep gut feelings, inner knowingness. Um, but I'm a feely person. I
Yeah.
feel things so strong. I now know that that is called clairsentience
Yeah.
for any spiritual people out there. But I just would feel things. So yeah, I could, meet somebody and just it's almost like knowing everything about them. I remember meeting my husband way before actually marrying the guy and actually talking to him and literally seeing the vision of a book opening. And that's exactly how I described it to him. I feel like I can read you like a book. It's like instantly I could just see inside his soul. I understood how he reacted to things, how he said things, and why. And I think that's something that is always played out in terms of like just feeling into people in a way that maybe others can't. As I've developed and lost some of the fear, my information comes differently now. I do have clairvoyance, so I will get really fast, quick images pop into the third eye area or into my mind. I also hear things quite often, but I hear information in my own voice. All right, so this is where
Okay.
people get really confused when you're communicating with spirits or guides or anything. People think that you actually see a ghost or see a spirit, stood in front of you, and they think that you actually hear their voice. Not at all for me. I see quick flashes of information in my mind, and I hear me speaking myself in my mind. So you can see how, unless you actually testing this and going out and getting curious about having a communication, how would you even know?
Yeah.
And that's why now, looking back, I realized all of those times I used to think in a certain way, how I feel, how I knew, how I would hear my voice. Oh my God, this has been happening to me forever. I
Yes.
remember
Yeah.
hearing things from my own voice in bed as a 9-year-old. So it's interesting. I feel it might be something that happens to a lot of people and they don't realize it.
Absolutely. And it just brings me back to us even talking about on previous episodes about our intuition and listening to that subtlety of the inner voice. So obviously there's a degree of that that's intuition, but there could also be that you're interpreting messages from spirit. But when you say that you're getting flashes of information, I'm going to dig into that one. So, what is that a visual? Is it a feeling? Is it like, I mean, obviously you're saying that when you can hear yourself, so clairaudient. But what, when you say flashes of information, what is that? Or even give us an example of,
Mm.
um, you know, uh, someone that you were connecting with that was coming through for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a million. And to be really honest, every connection I do is made up of lots of different ways I'm getting
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So my job, honestly, is I am a translator. That really is my job in a nutshell. It's like speaking to someone with a different language, and I have to work out what they're saying and how all of these things that are coming to me, whether it be in looking at a photograph, a little mini film playing out in my mind, hearing something, the feeling that goes along with
Yes.
that. I have to really quickly take all of that information and translate it into something that someone's going to be able to understand. It's very hard. But looking back at the early days, I found an incredible mentor and joined a group, and we were given lots of exercises where it might be as simple as someone posting a photograph of someone that had passed over in the group, and I remember one of the first times I did this actually, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I'm gonna give this a go." And I brought up the photograph and I did my little spiritual practice of, chilling myself out. And the information came really quickly and it was almost like just bullet points. I saw a cowboy hat, wrote it down. I got the feeling that he was on some type of a quad bike and it was connected to his passing over. I then saw a farm visually. Okay. Again, it can be used like
Yes.
my memory of a farm can be shown to be at that point. Okay. So I just write it down and you just kind of get bullet points of information. For me personally, I love to write it down really quick, or that's what helped me at the very
Yeah.
beginning. And then I remember this particular first time I wrote all of this stuff down. I then quickly, before I doubted it, wrote it on the post in this private Facebook group. And literally the wife of that person that passed away came back to me and confirmed actually, yeah, he lived on a farm. I saw he'd bumped his head. He was in a quad bike accident after he ran over a tree. And he wore that cowboy hat every single day of his life. It was his most prized possession and he got buried with it. So that's how the information started early on. It was just quick, like I
Yeah.
couldn't really keep the connection more than a few minutes. And it was
Yeah.
just quick things I had to just quickly write down. And then obviously over time, I've learned how to keep the connection a little bit longer, how to decode the signs and the pictures. But a lot of the time, I'm not going to be able to decode it in the exact way that someone
Yes.
wants to receive it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much trust in that as well, trust of yourself, because,
Mm.
we dismiss a million thoughts and feelings every single day. Like something pops into our mind, even that intuitive hit, not even connecting with spirit, but that intuitive hit that we just dismissed it because everything else that's going on in our head is so much louder than that. So for anyone who's listening, who's starting to feel, or if this is something they want to explore, I just imagine that trusting yourself, trusting some of those, doing the journaling, doing the writing it down, and then finding some safe places or ways of practicing that would be really good for them.
Mm.
Because I think a lot of our intention on this podcast is to be as practical as possible, to give people some tips and things that they can do to, to uncover their gifts. As you were speaking there, so one of the things that I know for me that I had a question about in the early days was the difference between, channeling and mediumship. So when I think of channeling, I think of, someone like Abraham Hicks who comes through to Esther. So it's basically everything is 100% channeled
Mm.
through. So there's, my understanding is that there's no interpretation or very little interpretation or translation there. Whereas for a medium, it's more translating. So you're getting, as you say, flashes of information, feeling, senses, and then your job is to translate that. Um, so how difficult is that for you? Because you have your own life experiences you mentioned about, the farm that you're seeing, your own farm. How does your own interpretation of the world either help or hinder you in that?
Oh, wow. I mean, this is where the practice comes in.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me that really early on, I was guided to go out there undercover, number one, as the masked medium, because I
Yeah.
was way too scared to put my name to it. But then, knowing that or getting the advice or the download at the time to do 100 readings, this is like a muscle. Right,
Yeah.
you have to practice all the time to understand these signs and symbols that come to you and learn how to actually translate it. um so I guess doing that 100 readings really quickly in a short amount of time and getting so much practice allowed me to work out, number one, that I was the key, and my only job really was to get out of my own way. Because the minute that I received a bit of information and my logical, rational mind steps in, I'll try and
Yes.
work out, oh, okay, so I've seen that quad bike. What could that mean? Yeah, maybe they were on a tree. You actually, your logical mind starts to try and come up with the solution or the answer or what you should say. And I realized that actually, no, that has to go. You have to let go of your ego, let go of the outcome of being right. Because if you always just want to be
Oh,
right,
wow. That is
you will
huge.
never successfully deliver information. And that was
Yes.
hard for me. that was part of the journey for me. I think we always like to be right. I think maybe it's just me a little bit more than others. I'm not sure, but that was what I found hard. So being the masked medium, not having my face attached to the readings, not having my name attached to the readings at first, allowed me to experiment. It allowed me to play around with what works, what doesn't, what symbols mean this. As an example, very early on, and it's funny, obviously, like, spirits must just give you certain people to read at the right time.
Yes.
I remember I went through like 2 weeks, and every single reading that I would do, I would see a family member. And this family member I connect with being in the military. And I
Oh,
started to realize that he was just appearing in every reading, this quick flash of his face. As soon as I know I see him, the person that's passed over has been in some type of a military position. They've been in the army, the navy, whatever it might be. So
yeah.
once I see his face, because spirit will show me his face, I then will go for my gut feeling and I'll ask a little bit further. All right, which armed forces, or, was he in the navy? And I'll be shown a boat. All right, so he was the navy. So yeah, I get shown numerous things to work out one bit of the puzzle. And it's like being a detective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing all of those readings and learning that I will be shown certain memories, certain pictures that I understand, and then I'll try and work it out for the person I'm reading for. Like, that was really great for me. And now
It,
it's quite funny, I have fun with this. I have to share, last week I was doing a reading and I was in the middle of telling her all sorts of different stuff. And I'm being shown constantly an image of a mushroom. My logical mind goes, well, what are you just going to say? Mushroom? And just see how she's going to respond.
yeah.
What does you like mushrooms? That's because that's where you go. You like mushrooms. Can you imagine a psychic just saying
Yeah.
that to you?
Or
Like,
what's for dinner?
so the ego goes, well, don't say that. You're going to look like a fool. You're going to lose all. Your image is gone. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to it's going to be damaged what people think. And I just happened to say, I'm really sorry. This is a very strange one, but I have to say, what is the connection to you talking about mushrooms at the moment? And there was a pause, and then she burst just out laughing. And, she shared this whole thing because I knew it was magic mushrooms. And I also said,
You didn't say that.
I didn't want to accuse her. Have you been taking magic mushrooms? No, actually, her and her friends had like weeks of conversations about magic mushrooms, and she found that hilarious. And again, like, what a pointless piece of information or image for me to receive in that reading. Yeah, I feel like random bits of information are the most important because, as you mentioned before, Dianne, that piece of information can't be found on Facebook. That
Yeah.
can't be Googled about a person. It's something personal that they've just spoken about.
Yes.
And I find that is something that happens all the time. I get random bits of information that validates at that moment that no one else can know.
Yeah.
You've just been this, you need to go for a mammogram. You've been thinking about going for a mammogram. I just thought that this morning.
Yeah. It's the
Those are the
validation. Yeah. And I know for me, having gone for readings over the years, it's always those totally left of field, something that comes in and you think, how does that even end up here? And it's something that nobody else would know. A lot of it is something, a thought process, or, a conversation between, closed parties. It's not something that's available on social media or that someone can quickly Google about you. So it's interesting that those things get dropped in almost to let the person lower their level of skepticism, because I'm sure there are lots of people who go to readings and they're not fully open. They're going either because maybe a friend dragged them along, if it's something that's a group setting, or they're just not sure. They're a little bit closed, but a little bit curious, but they're still, it's almost like, prove it to me. I'm not opening up until you give me something. And so the fact that you're saying that these little nuggets of information get dropped into you, it just allows that person to be open to receiving the core message, which I'm sure for anyone who comes to you or to anyone who is a medium, there is always a core message that is meant for them.
Yeah, and I will say that I can feel straight away how open someone is for a reading.
Okay. So
Even
how? This is me. I want to know the how. I want to know the mechanics of this. It's like, is it a
yeah.
feeling in your body? Is it an energy, like an aura energy sensing? What is that?
Yeah, it's energetic. So I read slightly different, I think, to some people. So I always ask for a photograph of either that particular person, if it's more of a kind of a future or
Yeah.
psychic reading, or the loved one that's passed over in spirit. And I always spend a minimum of half an hour beforehand tuning into the energy of the person in the photograph. And I'll feel very quickly how open my energy fields and how
Yeah.
quickly the information comes. If I've got someone that's really open, I can sit there and write 5 pages of information in like 15 minutes. My hand kills, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes it's like listening to a broken radio where you're really trying to tune it in and go between the stations to get the information, and you're like, this is so hard. You know, sometimes it is so hard, and you know, there could be a million reasons for that. But for me, I feel like it is to do with the openness of how someone is feeling for the reading. Um, and there probably is an element of, the person on the other side also trying to,
Yes.
come down to my vibration to give me the information. So sometimes the information is so bitty and it's very hard for me to piece it together. Sometimes, and I have had an incredible experience, one particular moment comes to mind where I channeled a beautiful lady, a mum actually came through to me for someone that I was reading for. And it was almost like that lady stepped into my body. I could feel
Oh
exactly what she was
gosh.
like. And, I've heard of blending, and I
Yes.
think that that's what happened, all right? And I've had it happen since then. A spirit blended with me, and it was so crazy that the girl. This was an email reading I did. The girl came back to me afterwards, and she said, "Even the way that you wrote that information was like listening to my mum speak."
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so I guess that's another form of that channeling when you've got such a direct connection with a spirit.
I love, and this is for me, this is absolutely, satisfying my thirst for curiosity on this, because even when you were talking about tuning into the radio station and how difficult it is getting bits and pieces of information, and then you go to the other side where it's so fluid and so you're blended with the person who is bringing the information, so much so that their loved one in the physical realm is able to actually say, that sounds like my mum. Wow. Like that's just such a gift to
Mm,
be able to do that. And you mentioned about getting out of the way. That is also you getting out of the way as much as possible to be able to allow that connection to flow through.
mm.
So I think my
Absolutely. I mean, really, I don't have that much of a part to play. If I'm
Oh,
just in
don't
all of
don't
this.
discount yourself. It's like you've
Oh,
got to
no.
be open to this. It's like anyone who is a facilitator, it's like I know for me, just in my own work, I never say that I'm a healer, but I facilitate the process of healing because a lot of coaching work just brings up things that need to be healed for people. So I
Mm,
often discount myself. It's like, oh, but I'm just facilitating this. It's like, but if the facilitator is not there to facilitate the process, then that person may never get that message, never get that healing, never get that kind of momentous shift forward. So yeah, for you, Liz, and for anybody else listening, it's like never discount the role that
no.
you play in that, because it is
Oh, look.
absolutely huge.
I mean, I know from the amount of hours that I've dedicated to work on this gift
Yeah,
now that I know that there's been a lot. I feel it is a responsibility I have now, and that's
yeah,
why I do readings. Yeah, I will say on the other side of it is that when I am connected to his spirit, it's as easy as me walking down the hall. There is no
yeah,
effort at
yeah.
all involved in it. It's just the effort is the writing, where I'll write the notes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'd just like to call out to people listening as well, is if you're in the skeptic boat and you're the one, but you're still, signing up for a reading, or you want to engage, whether it's Liz or whether, you've done it in the past. I guess what's coming to me is be as open as you possibly can. There's nothing wrong with being skeptical. There's nothing wrong with, wanting to have something properly validated. But if you go in very closed, then you kind of don't get your return on investment, so to speak. It's like, you are investing in this reading, you're investing your energy, you're investing your emotions, because there is a lot of emotional charge that goes with, wanting, you're there for a reason, you want to connect with a loved one. So just being as open as you can, and even spending a little bit of time, whether it's in meditation or reflecting on that loved one or
Mm.
what your intention is for the reading, would be a really good thing to do before going in. Because if you do that, that helps that almost like three-way connection between you, the medium, and the person or people that you want to connect with in spirit. So the more things that you can clear out of the way, the better the messages that you're and the experience that you're going to have.
Absolutely, Diane.
Oh, it's funny for me. There's so much around this about intention, but it is a case of, yeah, can you hear the corporate speak in me or the entrepreneur speak? It's like your return on investment. But it's true. It's like you're investing a lot. It's like if you're going out on a limb and you're being courageous and you're signing up for this reading and you don't know what the fuck is going to go on, it's like follow through in it. Just, be courageous, be open, but of course have always have that healthy sense of cynicism,
Mm.
because I know that you mentioned in one of our previous podcasts you are a cynic by nature, or you're quite skeptical.
Yes, I
Yeah.
still am. I can't help it.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be in my nature, but I guess when I say cynic, I'm kind of like, yeah, a mini detective. I won't necessarily just take the word of what someone tells me. I go and play around with that and try it and see what works and see
Yeah.
what doesn't work. So I think the last 2 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been playing around in this field, this new field that I've somehow found myself in. Um, and yeah, I have that understanding now, but it's no surprise to me that someone's a cynic, because I now know the other side of it. I now know what it's like to try and piece together information. So if you say something that's not exactly how something happened, and that person closes down in the first 5 minutes of a
Yes.
reading, they're missing the gold. They're missing the gold. Sometimes the person you're reading for also has to be able to translate the information. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, so let me play back how I'm understanding this. So if you're giving, okay, I'll use for our listeners the fact that when David the medium in our last podcast episode 3, he had just thrown it out there. He said, "I'm not sure who this for, but this is for, but it's the partner of the mother." Now he didn't know whether it was for me, didn't know whether it was for you, and I feel
Mm.
like I'm interpreting here, but I'm thinking that whatever drops or downloads of information he was getting, it was almost like he just needed to get it out there and see what responded. Now, if both of us had been true cynics and skeptics and keeping our poker faces on, then we're not helping that reading. We're not helping him interpret a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I always say at the beginning of every reading that I do, I'm going to translate this information. I might not say the words in the exact order. Yeah.
Yes.
So write it down. If you don't understand something now, I want you to come back to it. And 99 times out of 100, someone will email me or message me the next day. So as an example, I read for a lady and instantly got drawn to her tummy area. And I was like, "You've been bloating. Have you been feeling really bloated?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You've actually got some type of sensitivity. I can feel like you need to stop eating dairy and red meat." And she was like, "No, it's definitely not that." And
Right.
2 days later called me back and was like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it. Actually, I went to this person and they said this and they said this." And all of a sudden, all of these things had kind of come into play. So you might not know the information right there and then. It
Yes.
might come to
Yeah.
you in a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's why I write everything down and come
Yeah,
back to it.
never discount anything. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you now that, so we've spoken about you connecting to people and loved ones who've passed. Do you connect with any other forms of spirit, whether it's spirits from another dimension, whether it's animal spirits? Is there anything else that
Mm.
comes through to you, not just people?
Oh, I had the most incredible experience with a dog actually just last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, people's pets often do come through, and you'll either get a picture of what type of animal it is, or you tend to get like little bits of description, so you might be able to tell like what type of cat it is or what color. And but so memorable a reading. I actually connected with a lady. It was probably 3 weeks ago now, called Michelle, and she'd come in for a psychic reading. So sometimes I don't get spirits just pop in, but the minute that Zoom call connected, I had this beautiful white dog. And when I say small, like it appeared as a visual as a small white dog, but the energy of this dog was huge and instantly wanting me to know that I'm her son.
Oh,
So again, this is where you have to
okay.
get out of your own way, right? I said
Yeah.
to her, "Look, I'm so sorry. I've got this dog that's come. It's this beautiful white dog, and he's saying that you used to call him your son." And she just burst into tears.
Oh, God.
And this dog communicated with me for a while, okay? And it was clear communication, as if I was communicating with you, Diane.
Yeah.
He showed me that he was, I guess, the main animal in her life that just meant so much to her. He told me that she'd been grieving and she carried intense sadness, and he just really wanted her to stop being sad. And on top of that, he was showing me things like some dog bowls that were in her house, and he was yeah, showing me exactly where these bowls were. He showed me that in the back of her car she still carried his lead around, and that she doesn't need to do that. If she He was coming with the message that it doesn't mean that you've forgotten me if you put those bowls away now.
Oh,
It's time to put the bowls away. And I gave all of this information to Michelle, and she was just in incredible amount of tears, and I could feel the grief, and this sadness, and the shock at what she was hearing as well,
yeah.
honestly. And afterwards, she told me that this was her little boy. That's what she used to call
Yeah.
him, his son, and he passed away 2 years ago. So for 2
Yeah.
years, she carried this enormous amount of grief, and I guess in the middle of COVID, she was a single lady. This was her pal, her best
Yeah.
friend. He was the person that got her through half of COVID, and when he passed away, life was just not the same. And, she carried a tremendous amount of, like, guilt, and she didn't wanna move those things. And yeah, and I think what happened to her after that reading was that she felt the most amazing amount of calmness. I remember saying to her, actually, like, "He's gonna come around you, like, you're either gonna feel him or see him in the next couple of days, like, he's gonna really make himself known." And the day after, she actually was just kind of in a house, and she saw a flash of white go past her eye, and she said
Oh,
she just knew that
you.
was him, and had a chat.
When you
But
know,
yeah,
you
she's
know.
that's right. She said to me since that actually other people had told her that he was around, but she'd always discounted it and was like, "Nah, nah." And this time was a bit different because she got that specific information, the calmness that she felt, and he came across as one of her spirit guides now, showing that he really kind of stepped beside her through life now, and he was here, and she just has a different amount of strength. So that was beautiful.
Unbelievable. And it is, we were talking about skepticism, and it's one thing for people to believe that you can connect with, a person who has passed, but to be able to connect with an animal in spirit as well. But for those of us who have pets and love our pets, it's like that is such a deep bond, such a deep connection. And it is so, so beautiful to think that that can continue after they've passed on. But what I love about that was almost like the message that was coming through was that permission to move on. So, not that there's any timeline on grief. Like, I mean, it takes as long as it takes and it's different for every person, but that permission to kind of say, it's okay to put the bowls away. It's okay to get rid of the leash. It's okay to just move on. I know that you haven't forgotten about me. That is huge in someone's life to just allow them
Mm.
to take the quality of life that you will have after that is phenomenal.
Ah, and you know what? And I am the first person to say that any cynics out there, if I were to go around, I don't know, just generally talking to the fact that I communicated with the dog, I mean, that's going to sound crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
could you imagine? And what I found really interesting with that particular communication was that that dog was communicating like a human to me. I was getting the message in the same way as I would get someone that had passed over. So, yeah, how interesting that the dog could give such a clear message.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like whether it's a pet or a human that you've lost, they're always around. It's just that a lot of time we're just closed off to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they will seek out a medium to really tell you that message.
Yeah.
So if you feel ever the urge, to book a reading, don't second guess it. There tends to be a reason for it.
Yeah, and if I can just share on that one an example from myself that I had the opportunity. So a friend of mine who was planning to go to a medium with another friend, it was a group session, And the friend wasn't able to go. So she rings me up and she says, "Oh, I'm going to a fortune teller," was what she said, "tomorrow night. Do you want to come along?" And I thought, yeah, heck, I'll go. But when I got there, realizing that it was a medium that was doing so, I instantly, because Connie, who came up in the reading with David the medium, was someone that was recently lost to me. So I was not ready for any sort of connections
Mm.
with spirit. But true to form, he came through on that reading as well. And the whole mannerisms, everything came through. It was just an incredible experience. But I had no intention of going to a medium. I was not, had she mentioned she was going to a medium, I would have said, no, I'm not ready for that, even though I'm open to these things. But it was like somehow that had occurred. So there was a message that needed to come through from someone who had passed over, and I had been orchestrated to be in the room to receive the message that night. Like that for
Mm.
me is mind blowing. That if you end up feeling that you're called to connect with a medium, there's generally a reason for it. So just go and do it and be as open as you can to receiving that message.
Because you know what? I always think that you always go to a medium, like, hoping to see one particular loved one in spirit, and
Yes,
the
it might
problem
not
is,
be.
like, literally anyone can come through, and
Yeah,
you can end up bringing, like, a friend of a friend through, and the
yeah,
person's like, "Well, I don't really want them here," so they'll just shut down. One reading comes to me actually with this, and again, this was really early days, and I was under the mass medium. Someone got in touch with me and went, "I've got two granddads," and he sent me two photographs. I had two granddads, so
yeah.
me thinking like I had any type of control in the matter, I just chose a granddad. So, I had both photos up on my laptop. I closed one down. I thought, I'm going to read you. I don't know why. This granddad must have looked nicer to me. So I sat down and did a full reading on this one particular granddad, and emailed it through and said, yes, so I chose this granddad and here's the reading. And a few days later, he got back to me and was like, well, I have to say the reading was amazing, but it was the other
Wrong
granddad.
granddad. Yes. Just shows, yeah, when they want to
Oh my
come
God, I
through.
don't it was completely out of my control. Who did I think I could be determining which grand I could actually pull through? So, that's quite a funny
Yeah.
example of you just can't
Yeah. It's like
determine. Or
it's the whole get out of the way thing again. It's like you're putting your thoughts and your judgment on the situation when realistically it's like, nah, they'll decide what needs to happen. I need to ask because you're talking about like, and I can't even imagine the number of spirits that you have connected to in your time so far, and you're relatively early on your journey. How, because twice in the episode that we're doing now, you've mentioned about being connected to someone for a number of days or a prolonged connection. How do you carry all these people with you every day, or how do you
Ah,
disconnect purposefully to say that is the end of the session and I'm not going to bring this person forward? Is that something that you had to learn to do? Is it something that just comes naturally, does it just run its course and 3 weeks later or 5 days later you just disconnect? What is that experience like?
mm. This is an interesting question because the answer is yes. I can get people to me as soon as I wake up in the morning. I can feel a man with me, and I'll get certain bits of information. And that man might stay with me until, I do that one particular reading that they've been waiting for. So I get these people that come to me and give me these nudges, like really making it known that they're there and they want to force me to do it faster almost. However, they don't tend to hang around like all day. It's not like they just stay with me then and they're in the way or they're interfering. It can be that simple thing of the just coming in and out. An example of this actually was, again, quite early days. I had received a photograph,
Mhm.
and the photograph was sent from somebody I knew. And this was happening when I was undercover as the mass medium. So when I
Okay.
received, this random person came forward and said, please, can you do this spirit reading? I was instantly like, oh my goodness, there's no way I can do this reading because I know the person and they might find out it's me. Oh my God. So that email kind of got like pushed to one side. Yet instantly, within hours of me receiving that, I had this big, powerful man with me. And I remember even translating the information, like, he was like the chief, this warrior that came to me. He was super powerful and funny, and I could almost see him like a Buddha, like this big belly laugh, and, feel him so closely. So when he first came, he showed me instantly who he belonged to, and I was like, "No, damn it, okay,
Oh.
no, kind of go away," and I'd push him to one side, and he would constantly just pop in, and it'd be, I'd be doing my shopping around Coles, and then I'd feel suddenly him there, and I'd feel this same energy. And in the end, I was kind of like, okay, bloody hell, all right, I'll do this reading. And yeah, I channeled this information from him, and he came through as the chief. I saw him wearing this jade, this big jade kind of spiritual
Oh.
crystal thing, and he gave me very specific information. He showed me his passing was something to do with his chest. I could kind of feel that it was quite hard for him to breathe. But he had this humor, and he showed me specific, intricate details of him doing something very carefully with his hands, which I found it so hard to work out what it was. And in the end, I somehow found the courage to actually send this reading off to the person that I knew, and I actually had to come clean.
So you did
Um,
say who you
I
were.
came clean. I was like, well, first of
Oh.
all, I emailed from the mass medium and literally couldn't breathe until they responded.
Yeah.
And when they responded, going, "Oh my God, you don't understand how accurate that was." His nickname was the Chief. He always wore this jade around his neck. He did origami for the family business. I got all of this. The Chinese zodiac signs. Like, the list was all sorts of stuff that was so spot on. The Chief was very powerful at coming through. Only then did I dare to go like, "You're not going to believe this, but it's actually Liz."
Oh, shit. Oh my God.
And she was like, again, could not breathe until they were like, "What the hell?" and jumped
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, to answer your question, yeah, when a spirit really wants to connect, they will come. And he came even after that reading twice and passed on exact information about the girl that nobody knew at all. And
Right.
I found
Yeah.
that really mind blowing at the time for my development as a medium as well. That actually I had to trust the stuff that was coming.
Yeah.
This stuff isn't just my imagination popping in. This stuff is actually real.
It's real. So tell me right now, so what is going on? So we're having this conversation. So we're on Zoom, you're in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney. We're having this conversation for a podcast episode. What is going on around you? Like at the moment now, do you have, as an example, through this, does anything drop in as we're talking, or as you're just having a meeting with someone, or you're making dinner for the kids kind of thing? So just if I take this as a real life example, has anything occurred to you while we're talking? Has anybody been kind of in your ear or dropping in, or, giving you little signs and symbols?
Actually, one thing that's happening to me all the time, that's happened to me and is happening to me right now, is more of a collective bit of information or download that constantly is coming to me. And this has been coming in lots of different ways. It's been coming from angels that have been coming to me to pass through a message, and it's also been coming from my guides, I believe it to
Yeah.
be. And I've done videos around March being really, really powerful. And I've been told on many occasions through my guides that March has been this month where everyone has been having these natural endings, and it's been a time for moving into manifestation, that type of stuff. But one thing that I'm getting right now is around, there are so many people at the moment holding on to so much fear. And it's such a shame. It's like I'm being shown is that there's this potential over the other side of the bridge, but there's a whole lot of people stood at the start of the bridge, and they're too scared to cross it. They're too scared to move through it. And I'm talking in like a big life way, but I'm also talking in kind of a practical daily life as well, where people are holding on and procrastinating with decisions at the moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really important to knock back fear, because we're still really early March. And the ones that are able to overcome this fear, to take that first step over the bridge, move forward. I keep on referencing like getting on the train, are the ones that are actually going to have so many of these incredible small miracles happen. Like I'm being shown now, it will literally become like a jigsaw pieces put into place on what's going to happen later on in their year. So if you feel at the moment that you have anything holding you back, and actually I'm speaking to you directly here as well, Diane,
Okay.
is that if you are feeling like fear, procrastination, something is holding you from making that big leap, that big decision, which might actually change the path. Okay.
Yeah.
It can just change that path. And that is really scary. Then this is the message that just do it and trust. If you can do that, you could probably email me and go like, "Oh my god, I followed your advice. Guess what just happened? That house came available that I didn't think I could, or I found
Yeah.
this or I found that. I traveled here." Yeah, and even for myself, I get these messages channeled, and I really have to observe and reflect on where I'm at because this is happening to me as well, and I do keep getting these similar messages for myself.
Yeah, and it shows the evolution, I think, of your gift as well. That it's, we were in the beginning we were talking about how are you interpreting information with a particular like single spirit that you're connected to, but now it's like you're getting to more that collective and interpreting a collective energy as well, which I imagine is a
Mm.
very well. I'm imagining, but let me ask you the question how that information comes to you. How do you know the difference between here's an individual spirit and here's something that's for the collective or um, a section of the collective, like for a group of
Mm.
people?
This has only recently started to happen to me this year.
Okay,
And
okay.
the only way I can describe this, because I have the feeling right now in my body, so it's really easy for me to describe, is like my heart is like dying to expand. It's like the voice is coming from my heart and I have to say
Yeah.
it out loud. So it's a really bizarre feeling. And I sometimes can get like, I really need you to listen, because
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just speaking from there. And channeling from an angel perspective as well. Like an angel has stepped in a few weeks ago and the energy was just incredible. And the thing is about channeling, or when a message comes to you, is that this happens to all of us. And it's suddenly like when you just have something to say and you just need to
Say
say it.
it.
And you could be in a work environment and you just go on a 5-minute rant of something, that can just be coming from a different place.
Yeah. It just needed to
Um,
be said at that point in
that's
time.
right.
Yeah.
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 So that does happen to all of us in just different ways, I think.
I love
But
how
yeah, the
you
collective message is interesting.
I love how you describe because even the visuals of you, you're kind of putting your hands to your heart and exploding outwards when you talk about how it comes from your heart. Because that for me, when I had my spiritual awakening, that was what I felt like. I felt like my heart was going to explode. Absolutely, like
Yeah.
that, almost like with love, but not love in the traditional sense of for an individual person. But it was like, oh my god, I am overwhelmed with this. I don't know what to do with this energy that I'm feeling, but it's exploding from the inside out. And now I need to channel it towards something. It needs to be done for a
Mm.
greater good. So I imagine like I wasn't getting messages that needed to be interpreted. Maybe I was just closed off to that. But that sense of for you or for people who are experiencing this like you, again, it's getting out of your own way, trusting in the fact that whatever is coming through for you, whatever needs to be said. So, whether it is to a person that you know or a person you don't know, whether it
Mm.
is under a cover that you create an Instagram account for yourself or you hide behind a mask for a while, but finding avenues or finding ways for you to be able to open up and express your gift because what comes to me right now, and this again, it's very much my own value judgment from my own experience, is that when we try to close off to these things, it impacts our health, it impacts our overall well-being. It's just going to have a knock-on impact on our life because we're not being the fullest expression of who we are. So for anyone who is listening, out in our podcast land, that not holding on to this. So the time will come, Liz, you've mentioned about, okay, in your 20s, this was coming up for you and you shut it down. But it was like, that's your little preview. The seeds were being planted. You knew that the time would come when this would end up being
Mm.
something huge in your life. So I just want to have that kind of voice of encouragement for people that if this is happening for you, and your experience may be completely different, but I've no doubt that something in this session has resonated with people to say, oh, I identify with that. I totally get where you're coming from. Or even the fact of having a different perspective makes you realize, oh, okay, there are so many different ways that we can experience mediumship. There's so many different ways we can experience our spiritual gifts. And so long as we're being true to ourselves and we're taking that, step by step by step forward in a courageous way, because it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of trust,
Mm.
but knowing that, okay, like the lady that is sitting in front of me right now is very different. Like the essence of you is still the same, but we met in a corporate
Um,
capacity, we met through our, speaking world. And to think now that you are, you're no longer the masked medium. If anything, you are the unmasked medium, which is fantastic for me to be able to
mm,
see. Is there any pearls of wisdom, anything that you would like to, and again, going back to your early days,
mm.
anything that you think people who are going through that, that early stage of thinking you're going crazy, thinking, what is going on in my life, really doubting yourself, that fear that comes up for people when they're going through that spiritual awakening or their gifts are coming online, what pearls of wisdom would you offer to them?
I'm sat here and I'm like dying to say this out loud. It's not even for those people. Okay. This
Okay.
message is for everyone that's going to listen to this. And you're right, everybody's experience on a spiritual journey is so different. Yeah, there might be tiny elements of mine that might resonate, but mostly not. I've worked out by now that my job here is not to be a medium, to be really honest. I feel like this is just some type of practice. Okay. It's for me to believe in this stuff 100% to move on to what I'm meant to be doing. But what I've been led to do, and what's really funny is I just found this morning. I found a channel that I'd done really early on. This was on the 14th, oh no, the 2nd of September, no, earlier, sorry, the 30th of August, 2021. I actually did a channel that I needed to go and study to become a medium, and that I'll actually eventually write a program to help people to tap into their intuition, and eventually that'll be a book. All right, now that was years ago, before even me studying. Okay. And I keep coming back to this, is that my job is to highlight the fact that you don't need to be a medium and not everybody's going to be a psychic, but we all have that inner North Star, that inner GPS, which is our intuition. We don't need to be woo woo. We don't need to read spiritual books or attend meditation camps. Right? But what we can do is start to go internally. Our life is really hard. Our human existence is tough. We go through challenges and obstacles. We know that is going to happen. And what we fall into doing is always going outside when we've got a problem. Let me speak to every friend I have. Let me speak to the family. Let me go and look for books. Let me go to these courses to try and figure out these problems. You don't need to do any of that. If you just start to get into the habit of going inside to ask for the answer, that's when you will start to realize the power that you have inside. That's when you'll start to see the signs, to feel the signs, to get validation. And I say to all of my students now from my course, because I do, yes, now run Develop Your Intuition courses, is that if you actually just start to go inside and start to write down these things that you do, just like I did, and how I'm able to find that validation from all those years ago, you will start to see things happen around you that you might not be able to explain. And you don't even need to. All right. But it starts this incredible snowball off where the miracles get bigger, the gut feelings get stronger, and the quiet voice of the intuition starts to get louder. Most of our intuition comes through our body. All right. Physical intuition. Our body will tell us by feeling, by shudders, by shakes, sensations, good feelings, bad feelings, when you're on the right track or not. Just start there. You don't need to be a medium or a psychic. Okay. I don't even like still using the words medium and psychic, to be honest, because I don't really think that's me. What I think I am is just someone discovering the gift that's always been there, that's in every single one of us.
Oh, that is so beautifully put. It is. It's a gift. It's inside all of us. And getting out of the way of ourselves, tuning into that quieter voice or those signs and signals that drop in, And no matter who you are or what your role is in this world, you will absolutely be able to be a better person and contribute in a greater way if you do that. I just think that is such a powerful piece of advice and almost like the perfect place to close this session, because I'm not sure that we can build any further on that. There is no doubt about it, Liz. For me, I'm sure our listeners have learned lots through your experiences and hearing this, but for me, who has known you for a while now, I have learned so much about you and your gifts and how they actually operate and work. Still have a million more questions, and I'll do them offline, and we will probably get you back on, and I'll be curious again to interview you again. But for right now, I just want people to tune in to the pearls of wisdom that you've offered through this episode, and go and practice some of this. Tune into your body. Tune into some of those subtleties that are coming in and actually follow them. So we keep talking about experimenting and doing practical things. Go off and do that. And we love hearing your story. So please come back to us and let us know on Instagram if there is anything that is showing up for you, because we want to hear the stories too. It's not just about our stories. So from the bottom of my heart, Liz, thank you so much for today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dianne. Really appreciate it.
That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.